It began like a scene from a military thriller, one that left the Philippines both astonished and uneasy. At dawn, in the quiet expanse of Subic Bay, the unmistakable echo of rotor blades sliced through the humid air. Locals peered toward the horizon and saw something extraordinary: dozens, then hundreds of U.S. helicopters lined across the former American naval stronghold, their silhouettes gleaming under the tropical sun. Within hours, those same helicopters began vanishing, not flying away but being dismantled, crated, and moved under armed guard. At first glance, the sight of dismantled U.S. helicopters scattered across Subic Bay looked like a graveyard of forgotten war machines, an image that fueled confusion and even outrage. But beneath the surface, the operation unfolding, there was anything but wasteful. It was deliberate, disciplined, and deeply strategic, a masterclass in military logistics that few outside the Pentagon could fully grasp. The U.S. doesn't scrap frontline aircraft in secrecy. Not the CH-47 Chinook, the heavy-lift Titan that can carry artillery or an entire platoon of soldiers. Not the AH-64 Apache, a flying predator built to destroy tanks with pinpoint hellfire precision. And certainly not the UH-60 Black Hawk, the most versatile helicopter in American service, the same aircraft that has saved lives from Iraq's deserts to Afghanistan's mountains. These machines represent the beating heart of U.S. battlefield mobility. To see them being taken apart in one of the world's most geopolitically volatile regions could only mean one thing: preparation. Each rotor blade, each engine, each avionics system was being strategically removed, sealed, and stored, ready for rapid reassembly. Far from abandonment, this was pre-positioning, the quiet buildup of war-ready assets disguised as routine maintenance. Washington was doing what it has always done best, thinking several moves ahead on the global chessboard. Defense analysts quickly drew historical parallels. During the Cold War, the United States had perfected the art of forward logistics. Entire armored divisions were once hidden in warehouses across West Germany. Tanks were preserved with precision, their engines sealed in protective casings, waiting for the day U.S. troops would arrive and drive them straight into battle. The same doctrine was revived in the Middle East, where American vehicles sat pre-positioned in Norway's caves and Qatar's deserts, ready to roll within hours. Now, Subic Bay had entered that same elite list, the newest node in a global web of rapid response military power. The disassembled helicopters weren't a retreat, they were a message, one aimed squarely at Beijing. The U.S. never truly left Asia. It was merely waiting for the right moment to return. That moment had come. In the years following China's assertive expansion across the South China Sea, the balance of power had tilted dangerously. Artificial islands turned into fortresses. Long-range missiles pointed outward from newly constructed runways. The region's smaller nations, the Philippines included, felt the growing weight of Chinese dominance. For Washington, the response had to be swift, yet subtle, powerful, yet deniable. Subic Bay offered the perfect solution. From a distance, it looked like a civilian port. Up close, it was transforming into a forward logistics hub capable of sustaining helicopter units across thousands of islands without needing full-scale bases. The genius of this move lay in its ambiguity. There were no loud declarations, no grand ribbon-cutting ceremonies, only quiet shipments, coded manifests, and a rhythm of machinery that spoke louder than words. And as engineers continued to dismantle and crate each helicopter, one truth became clear: this wasn't the end of American air power in the Pacific. It was its silent resurrection, rebuilt piece by piece inside the shadows of Subic Bay. To understand the magnitude of what's happening at Subic Bay, one must first grasp what this place once represented. For nearly a century, Subic was the beating heart of American might in the Pacific. From World War II to the height of the Cold War, its docks roared with the engines of aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines. Fighter squadrons thundered overhead, and tens of thousands of U.S. personnel lived within its borders. Subic wasn't just a base, it was a statement of dominance, a fortress projecting the full weight of U.S. naval power deep into Asia. The spectacle sent ripples across the nation. To many in the Philippines, Subic Bay isn't just another port. It's a symbol, a ghost of American power that once dominated the Pacific. When the U.S. withdrew in 1992, the base was left behind as a relic of the Cold War. But this sudden surge of activity, this secretive helicopter operation, felt like the past roaring back to life. Witnesses spoke of CH-47, Chinooks, AH-64 Apaches, and UH-60 Blackhawks being methodically stripped down piece by piece. Engines were lifted by cranes, fuselages were wrapped in tarps, convoys of flatbed trucks rolled out of the Freeport Zone escorted by military police. Then in 1992, it all ended. The Philippine Senate voted to expel American forces, declaring a new era of independence. Overnight, the U.S. Navy withdrew, leaving behind hangars, barracks, and airstrips to rust in the tropical air. Many believed America's Pacific chapter had closed for good. China, quietly watching, began to move, building artificial islands, fortifying reefs, and claiming vast stretches of sea that once belonged to no one. The South China Sea became a flashpoint, and the absence of the U.S. presence became a vacuum Beijing was eager to fill. 3 decades later, that vacuum is closing quietly but decisively. Subic Bay is once again humming with the rhythm of machinery in motion. What appears to be dismantling is in fact reawakening. Under layers of secrecy, the United States is reestablishing its footprint on ground it once ruled, but with a far smarter playbook. Gone are the sprawling military camps of the 1980s. In their place comes a network of precision logistics designed for the 21st century. Instead of massive permanent bases that can become easy missile targets, the Pentagon now favors distributed strength modular hubs that can spring to life in hours, not months. Subic's vast hangars are perfect for this. Its deep water port can receive heavy cargo. Its location just 500 nautical miles from Taiwan and the Spratly Islands makes it an ideal forward platform for rapid deployment. From here, U.S. helicopters can reach nearly any point of crisis in the Western Pacific, from the shoals contested by China to the islands of the Philippines to the dense jungles of Southeast Asia. In a region where speed defines survival, helicopters are the ultimate wildcard. They can move troops, deliver supplies, evacuate civilians, or strike without warning. The Blackhawks bring versatility. The Chinooks bring reach. The Apaches bring fury. Together, they form a force that blurs the line between defense and deterrence. For Washington, this quiet resurgence marks a turning point in Pacific strategy. Instead of shouting its power, it's whispering, it letting presence speak louder than declarations. Every crate stored, every rotor packed away at Subic is part of a silent pledge: the United States will not allow the Pacific to fall under one nation's shadow. But this move does more than reshape the map. It revives a legacy, the idea that America's strength in Asia has never depended on permanence, but on readiness. And in Subic Bay, readiness is being rebuilt in silence. While jets dominate headlines with their speed and spectacle, it is helicopters that win wars on the ground. They bridge the impossible, connecting ships to islands, mountains to coastlines, and troops to battlefields that aircraft carriers can't reach. In the complex geography of the Pacific, an expanse of ocean dotted with 7,000 islands, rotary wing aircraft are the real masters of mobility. Every model seen at Subic Bay has a purpose, each one a crucial piece of the Pentagon's wider design. The CH-47 Chinook, towering twin-rotor and relentless, can carry up to 10 tons of cargo, or lift entire artillery systems across jungle or sea. The AH-64 Apache, bristling with missiles and sensors, brings unmatched air-to-ground firepower capable of halting an armored column in seconds. And then there's the UH-60 Black Hawk, the workhorse, that does everything: troop transport, medical evacuation, disaster relief, even clandestine insertions of special forces deep behind enemy lines. Together, they form a triad of speed, strength, and precision, a mobile army in the sky. And when those machines are stored pre-assembled and hidden in strategic positions across the Philippines, they become something far greater: a rapid response shadow fleet, invisible until the moment it strikes. For the United States, this flexibility is priceless. Unlike fixed air bases, which are map-targeted and vulnerable, helicopters can operate from almost anywhere: a stretch of beach, a field, even the deck of a supply ship. They don't need runways, they need only fuel, crews, and a destination. That means that within hours from Subic Bay alone, America can project force across the entire South China Sea, from disputed reefs to Philippine territories under threat. Rumors erupted almost instantly. Was America abandoning old equipment? Was this the final stage of U.S. withdrawal from the region, or the beginning of something far greater? For days, Philippine social media buzzed with speculation. Local fishermen claimed they saw nighttime cargo movements toward hidden storage hangars. Others whispered that the U.S. was covering up failures: defective helicopters dumped offshore, camouflaged under the guise of maintenance. And it's not only war these aircraft are built for. The same helicopters that could one day face Chinese forces can also rescue flood victims after a typhoon, deliver aid to remote islands, or evacuate civilians trapped in crisis zones. To the Philippines, this dual-purpose role is critical. It ensures that U.S. presence isn't just about deterrence. It's about partnership, showing strength but also support. Still, make no mistake, the strategic message behind Subic's helicopters is unmistakable. In an era where Beijing has militarized reefs and deployed anti-ship missiles across the South China Sea, the U.S. has answered not with a direct challenge, but with mobility, the one advantage no adversary can easily counter. The more unpredictable America's response capabilities become, the harder it is for rivals to plan. For Beijing's military planners, that's a nightmare. Aircraft carriers can be tracked, airfields can be bombed, but a fleet of modular helicopters hidden in hangars across friendly territory, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. That creates uncertainty, and in warfare, uncertainty is power. The genius of the Subic operation lies in its subtlety. The world sees spare parts, the Pentagon sees potential energy. What looks like inactivity is preparation. What seems like silence is strategy. Because in the Pacific's new great game, the quiet machines will decide who moves first and who falls behind. When the first reports of helicopter dismantling surfaced from Subic Bay, China's state-run media dismissed it as routine U.S. logistics. But inside defense circles in Beijing, alarms were ringing. What looked routine on the surface carried a much deeper strategic message. One carefully calibrated by Washington. The United States is not retreating from Asia. It is entrenching itself smarter, quieter, and closer than before. For Beijing's military planners, this move shatters long-held assumptions. China's strategy in the South China Sea depends heavily on predicting American movements. It relies on time, the delay between crisis and response. Aircraft carriers take weeks to reposition. Air bases in Japan and Guam are well known, their coordinates long embedded in Chinese missile guidance systems. But the sudden reactivation of Subic Bay changes that equation entirely. Now the U.S. possesses a pre-positioned fleet hidden in plain sight, within striking distance of every flashpoint from Taiwan to the Spratly Islands. Helicopters stored there can be reassembled, tested and launched in days, not weeks. In modern warfare, that time difference can determine victory or defeat. Subic transforms the Philippines into a forward operating anchor in a region where distance once constrained America's reach. And this move didn't come from nowhere. It's the product of a growing network, one that includes the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement (EDCA) signed between Washington and Manila, allowing U.S. forces to rotate through Philippine bases. Add to that the new security pacts with Japan, Australia, and South Korea, and the message becomes clear: a new Pacific coalition is forming, united not by conquest, but by deterrence. In this context, the Subic Bay operation is as symbolic as it is tactical. It signals to allies that the United States isn't merely offering words of reassurance, it's placing hardware, manpower, and capability on the line. Every crate of helicopter parts tucked away in those hangars is a silent promise. If conflict comes, America will be ready. But when high-resolution satellite imagery surfaced online, the story changed overnight. The images showed a steady arrival of intact helicopters, and not a single one left the bay by air. Each was strategically disassembled, cataloged, and moved inland. Analysts quickly realized what the locals had missed: this was not destruction. It was deployment through deception. For Manila, this revival of U.S. activity is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brings protection and confidence, proof that the world's most advanced military stands beside them. On the other, it also means the Philippines is once again a front-line state, a potential staging ground in any confrontation between superpowers. Yet most Filipinos watching the events at Subic understood something deeper, that history was repeating, but this time with lessons learned. Across the Pacific, allies from Tokyo to Canberra watched the footage closely. Japan saw an insurance policy. Australia saw a partner re-engaged, and Taiwan, facing constant pressure from Chinese aircraft and naval patrols, saw something more: hope. Because behind the crates, engines, and rotor blades lies an unmistakable truth. The United States is quietly reshaping the strategic map of the Indo-Pacific, one port, one base, one helicopter at a time. But the story doesn't end here. The operation at Subic Bay may only be the first domino. Intelligence reports suggest similar logistics patterns emerging across the Pacific Arc, from Darwin in Australia to Palawan, from Guam to Micronesia. The question isn't if Washington is rebuilding its Pacific command network, it's how far it's already gone. In the global contest for dominance, geography has always been destiny, and nowhere is that truer than in the Pacific. Subic Bay, once a relic of the Cold War, now sits at the center of a new 21st century chessboard, where every move is silent, every gesture calculated, and every piece matters. The United States, long thought to have ceded its hold over Asia's waters, is once again positioning itself not as a visiting power, but as a permanent presence reborn through precision. From space, satellite imagery tells the story better than any speech. Cargo ships offloading containers at dawn, convoys of trucks disappearing into hangars. Patterns of activity that resemble a military base without the official declaration of one. The strategy is deliberate ambiguity, enough visibility to deter aggression, yet enough secrecy to maintain flexibility. For Washington, the goal is not simply to challenge China, it is to outthink it. The Subic operation demonstrates a doctrine the Pentagon now calls agile, basing the ability to disperse, deploy, and strike from unpredictable locations. In a world where missiles can travel at hypersonic speeds, survival depends on adaptability. By decentralizing its forces, America ensures that no single attack could ever cripple its reach. The echoes of this doctrine are already visible across the region. In Japan, new joint bases are being reinforced. In Australia, U.S. Marines rotate through Darwin in growing numbers. And in Micronesia and Palau, runways are being extended ports. Expanded communication links upgraded, all forming a web of readiness stretching from Hawaii to the South China Sea. Subic Bay is simply one node, but it's a vital one, the reawakened nerve center closest to the heart of the storm. For the Philippines, this revival brings both risk and relevance. The nation once again finds itself at the crossroads of global strategy, a bridge between two worlds, a host to an alliance that still shapes history. And for the region, America's return serves as a reminder that power never truly disappears. It evolves. As global tensions rise from Taiwan's straits to the reefs of the Spratly Subic's quiet rebirth stands as both warning and reassurance. A warning to those who underestimate American resolve and reassurance to those who still believe that freedom in the Pacific must be protected, not just promised. Behind the apparent chaos lay a pattern. Helicopters were being broken down for pre-positioning, stored close enough to the South China Sea to be reassembled in a matter of hours. Every bolt, every blade was part of a calculated logistical puzzle, one that only the Pentagon could execute with such precision. Because in the end, these helicopters are more than machines. They are symbols of reach, resilience, and readiness, and as their parts lie, waiting in the dark hangars of Subic Bay, so too does the world wait watching, wondering when the engines will roar again. The game has changed, the board has shifted, and once more America has moved its pieces into position. Subic Bay was once a memory, now it's a message that the United States, even after decades of silence, can return with precision, patience, and purpose. What seemed like scraps of metal were in truth the seeds of strategy, a quiet promise that when the Pacific trembles, America will answer first. For every ally who feared abandonment and every adversary who thought time had erased U.S. influence, Subic Bay is living proof of the opposite. The dismantled helicopters aren't relics of decline. They're instruments of deterrence, stored protected and ready to take flight when history demands it. This operation isn't about escalation. It's about readiness, about keeping peace through strength and ensuring the Pacific remains open, free, and beyond domination. Because deterrence in its purest form isn't loud, it's quiet, confident, and undeniable. So as the world debates and analysts speculate, one truth cuts through the noise. The United States has re-entered the Pacific chessboard, and it did so without firing a shot. What happens next could define an entire generation of geopolitics. Do you see Subic Bay's helicopter operation as a defensive safeguard or as the opening move of something far larger? Share your thoughts below, and if you believe the world needs to understand how these silent strategies shape our future, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next move, America's next move, might already be underway. For the United States, Subic Bay has always been more than geography. It's a gateway 500 nautical miles from the flashpoints of modern Asia, Taiwan, the Spratly Islands, and the world's most contested sea lanes. By quietly reactivating Subic's dormant facilities, Washington wasn't scrapping its machines. It was rebuilding its forward presence right under the radar of Beijing's surveillance networks. In just a few weeks, the port that once symbolized the end of an era had transformed into a staging ground for something new, something powerful, and perhaps inevitable. The question now burning across the region was simple yet chilling. Why here and why now? What prompted the United States to return to Subic Bay after more than 3 decades? The answer, as we'll uncover, lies not in the wreckage of old helicopters, but in the rebirth of a strategy, one that could reshape the balance of power in the South China Sea and redefine America's role in the Pacific once again.